Most people think audits are something to fear, but the truth is they're just something to prepare for. Because it's not the audit itself that creates problems, it's your disorganization, missing documentation, and not knowing what to expect. So the good news, with the right approach, you can get through an audit confidently and in control. And I'm going to show you how today. Whether it's a tax audit, an internal review, or a business audit, the process can feel overwhelming. But when you break it down, it really comes down to organization, communication, and preparation. So we're going to walk through 5 key things that will help you handle an audit the right way. Hello, everyone. I'm Belinda Ellsworth, and I would love for you to hit subscribe and like if you hear any of the material today that you enjoy. So I was always very fearful of having an audit myself. It's something when you own your own business or you're filing a long form tax form with deductions that you do, if you're an entrepreneur, you are concerned about or you need to be, you're thoughtful about. And so, yes, I was audited one time. It has been many, many years ago. However, I do want to share with you because I was fortunate to have someone share with me how to best prepare for that audit. And I have heard so many nightmare stories of audits. And I have to say that my audit went extremely smoothly, and it actually was relatively quick in the scheme of things. I think it was an hour and a half, 2 hours long. Some people are there for 4 and 5 hours going through things. And in fact, I think mine was about an hour and a half. He actually complimented me on how well prepared that I was. I think that that was something that made them not dig as much because everything was so organized. And he said he rarely sees that when he goes into an audit. He's like, you would be surprised at people that show up with a box of receipts. So I was like, okay, so this is just some of the things that I do want to share with you. Here is my number 1 tip. Fortunately for me, someone had shared with me this tip in an audit that they had gone through. So I thought, okay, I want to make sure that I'm prepared. So when they looked at my receipts, which this is my number 1 tip if you take nothing else away from this today, when they would look at my receipts, then they would immediately go into my date book or whatever calendar that you have. If you're showing them an electronic calendar, they're going to want to see a calendar. And the first thing that they would check is they would look at the receipt and then they would go to that date. If that receipt that I was claiming that I had lunch with a client and I was taking a part of that as a deduction, then they would see, is that lunch-in with that client scheduled in my calendar? And if it wasn't, then they were not counting that deduction, or it was going to be much more difficult. So because I knew that, I had gone in preparation and made sure that in my receipts that those dates were in my calendar. So if I needed to add some of those dates into my calendar, not because they weren't legitimate, but just because maybe I had forgotten to write that in. Or maybe it was an impromptu meeting and then we had lunch and then I put that in as a receipt, but then it was never originally in my calendar. So anyway, I took a calendar, my calendar that I had, took those receipts and then went back into that calendar and added any necessary meetings, places that I went, if it was in regard to mileage, any of the deductions that I was claiming, I made sure that I had reference to that as a meeting or an appointment or a trip or any of those things in my calendar. Now, one of the things that has really sort of come into play as being sort of a crackdown on is when you are on a trip and you are trying to claim that as part of a business trip. And sometimes you can just claim if you're on vacation for a whole week. People are like, you can take your whole vacation. No, you really can't. You can take any portion of that vacation that might be where you were actually doing business. So if you're on this trip and you actually met with a client while you were in that location, you need to make sure that in your calendar you had on that trip that you met with that client at XYZ. And that is where a lot of people, and even in mine, I had not covered that as well. And so some of those deductions did not end up counting when I was on a trip location. So that was one that I kind of had some of them, but then I had missed, because when you're on vacation, you don't list everything in your calendar. And so that is something that is important, and you want to make sure that you take the time to do. So that is my biggest number one tip if you don't listen to anything else. So the second thing is, and someone else had shared this with me, that they like to see a running tally. So like a tape, like from an adding machine, right? And so I had, in a particular category, all of my expenses, but then I actually had listed each one, like just typed it into the machine and it recorded, and then I had that taped to the outside of that sheet. So the way that I did it, the way that I organized everything, was I had a notebook and then different pockets. So you can get pocket fillers for notebooks. And I had labeled each one a different category of expense. I had all of those expenses listed there. Some of those you get from QuickBooks, right? And then I actually had the ticker tapes paper clipped or stapled to the outside of that. And then in the pocket, I had some of those receipts or any documentation that I might want covered with that. That is the one thing he loved more than anything else. So as he looked at that sheet and he saw the itemized deductions, and then he saw how it added up, what the total was. He looked at dates to see if they matched, and he said, wow, this is impressive. So when they're impressed, and when it looks like you are actually on top of your game. So I walked in, was I nervous? Sure, I absolutely was nervous. I'm not going to say I wasn't even nervous, but I was also very ready and very confident. Not cocky confident, but just like, okay, I'm ready here. I'm prepared and I'm ready to answer your questions. And because everything was in front of me and I had studied it a bit. So I had looked, because I had all my sheets on the outside of each category, I had looked at those deductions, I had matched them to my calendar, I had looked to my calendar and reminded myself of different events. I mentally was prepared for that too. So he just randomly started asking questions and I was answering. Tell me about your business. Tell me about blah, 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 blah. So I was just answering those and answering them confidently. He said, okay, let's take a look here. And he started diving in. And the first thing he said was, wow, this is extremely organized. So that in itself kind of took the edge off of the entire thing. I think it took him off it being so maybe aggressive, because he was actually very happy with the things that were laid out. Then he started just checking things. And when multiple things started checking out, like, oh, that's there, he was like, wow, okay. So then they checked less. The whole thing went much quicker. And then in the end, it was only about 10%, if even then. I think it ended up being like 6% of the deductions that I had, they were saying weren't allowable. It was a very small amount of money at the end of the day that I end up owing on that audit, which was a relief. That's the worst thing. I had friends who had gone through audits who ended up owing thousands of dollars at the end of that time. But I think, and they had been there for hours, the reason that mine went as quickly as it did was because once he would start checking things and they all lined up, then they didn't keep continuing to check on things, because then they don't want to waste their time. They're looking for inconsistencies. So you want to be consistent in the way that you have things. They're looking for organization. So if you are disorganized, they figure you're disorganized in your business, and you're going to be disorganized with your deductions in what you claimed. Because if you don't know anything about your business, or really what's going on with it, and everything is just chaos, then they figure that you were probably chaotic when you were filing your taxes as well. So how you show your hand is how you show up there, and how you actually run your business, and how prepared you are, how thoughtful that you are. Because if you've got a lot of integrity in this, and everything is lining up, then they're going, okay, this is probably the way it is throughout the entire thing. So that is some of the most important things that I can say to you in preparation. So number one is to get organized before you actually respond and go in. The next one is understand what you're actually being asked. So not all audits are the same. Read your notice carefully. So are they asking for a complete audit? Or are they only asking for a very specific section in audit? So identify exactly what is being reviewed, and then don't oversend unnecessary information. This is another mistake that people make, or they set themselves up for a full-blown audit when they went there. And so make sure you read your paperwork, and specifically, what are they auditing and what are they looking for? Clarity will save time, and it will protect you from creating new issues that you never probably had to deal with. So tip number 3 is document everything. If it's not documented, it doesn't exist. And that's kind of what I've already gone over. But what kinds of records to keep? Communications, submitted documents, dates and timelines, which I already mentioned. Receipts need to align with all of those things in good communication. Number 4, respond clearly and professionally. Don't be aloof. Don't act like you're trying to hide something, but you want to respond confidently and professionally and clearly. So again, it's good. I almost studied like it was an exam. Like before my audit date, I first went through and made all myself to make sure everything was organized. And then the days before, I crammed like I would for an exam, for a final. And I had a lot of things memorized, or, knew them pretty clearly, that if I had to just look, I didn't want to be like asked a question and going, I'm not really sure, let me see, and flipping pages and flipping pages. If he asked me something, I was able to go right to it. I was actually able to show the documentation. I was able to answer it clearly, and I had everything in order. And a lot of it I knew because I had studied my documentation before I went. And then tip number 5 is get help if you need it. So you don't have to do this alone. You can have your accountant go with you, or advisor, or a professional support person, especially if it's in complex situations. The right guidance can save you time, money, and stress. So just to recap quickly, because here's what I know. Tax season is coming up. And I also want to try to help you, as maybe this year is coming to a close and you are getting ready to file your taxes, and maybe you found that process to be easy, or maybe you found it to be hard. This is a good time to start putting some of these organizational tips into place, just so that your taxes will be easier next year. And then if you were to ever be audited, it would not be as stressful. So just to give you a few little tips in the way that we file here. we have a couple of sets of file cabinets out there. We have all of our current like receipts or any kind of information that we need, credit card statements, those kinds of things. So we have a certain ones that all have their own folder. All of the things go in there for that year. When that year is over, we actually move all of that stuff to then we categorize it and we do our taxes. It is all filed, and then we put that into a file for that year. And then all of those documents for that next year, all I have to do is change that to the current year. So my file cabinet that is the one closest to me, it just has what? The most recent year that we are in. Then you can take all of those preparation for filing your taxes and put that into the next year. I keep 3 years up here, up in my upstairs area where my office is, and then they get filed in a box for our taxes and they go downstairs, and we keep those for like 10 years. So that way it's not taking up a huge amount of space, and we have just a kind of tub with all of our tax information. And I had kept mine forever. Just recently, I let go of some of the ones that were down there that were like 20 years old, just because I was one of those people like just put them in a box, put them in a big bin down there, plastic bin, so they don't get destroyed, wet or whatever. And they're just in the basement, and I just like got rid of a bunch. I just kept the last 10 years, which you really have to keep 7, but it's always good to have a couple extra because you never know. And but then I got rid of all the ones from the previous 10 years that I just didn't really need to hang on to. So that's just a little bit of organizational tips, because the way that you prepare and do your taxes and the way you make it so much easier on yourself to complete your taxes. And if you do a profit and loss statement every single month, then and clip that to the outside of, that your taxes, in preparation for your taxes, it's going to make things so much easier to be able to look at that each month and then look for your documentation. It'll make the whole process easier for your tax provider, whoever is doing your tax preparation. And then it's going to make it easier. Just, I hope that you never get audited. It's kind of a stressful thing. But if you are, be confident that if you have prepared well, if you are organized well, and you can educate yourself or remind yourself, because sometimes you're audited. I think my audit was like 3 years back that I got audited in. It wasn't for the most recent year. So that's why you want to study, and you want to be able to go back and then remember some of those appointments you had. When you look at your calendar, then you're able to like remember, oh yeah, that meeting was with such and such. That's where we discussed X. That was the work that I did that, came from that. Here is the receipts on that. So these are just some of the ways that you can really prepare yourself in a way that makes a big, huge difference. And of course, when you're more prepared, you are what? More confident. And the more confident that you are, without being cocky or aggressive, you're going to sail through that audit and not come out in a really having much change in the situation. So I hope that is helpful to you. I thought it was kind of perfect for this time of year. And feel free to subscribe or like. I appreciate, and share this with somebody if you think that they need it. I feel very fortunate that I was able to call on a few friends and say, hey, how did you prepare for this? And what did they ask for? And someone gave me some really great advice, which helped me sail through that experience, which is never pleasant. So thanks again. We'll see you guys in just a few days. Don't forget to check in and to be subscribed. You'll always see our most recent videos that we're dropping. Thanks, everyone.